The United States government has already done the thing the experts on television swear could never happen. It repriced gold by decree, one signature, one stroke of a pen, and the men who had laughed the idea out of the room the evening before woke up in a country where the dollar was simply worth less. That is not a theory. That is not a rumor from some corner of the internet. That is American history, and it is sitting in the law books right now. So let me give you my honest answer to the number in the title, right up front, because you should not have to wait for it. That number is not a joke, and it was never a joke. It is not a promise either. Nobody honest promises you a price, and I will not start. It is a case built on plain arithmetic and on a precedent that happened on American soil, in Washington, in broad daylight, with the full force of law behind it. Because a far higher gold price is not really a story about gold at all. It is a story about debt, and about what a government does when its debts can no longer be carried at the old measurements. If you have retirement savings measured in dollars, then whether you own a single ounce of metal or none, that story is your story. $8,000 gold. Say those words in most brokerage offices, and you will get the smile, that patient, slightly pitying smile the financial industry reserves for people it has decided are unserious. I have spent a lot of years around gold and silver, around the people who buy it and the people who mock it, and I have seen that smile aimed at people who turned out to be exactly right. The big banks and the financial channels have a business reason to laugh, and it is worth saying plainly, their model runs on your money staying in their products, trading on their signals, paying their fees. A retiree who understands what a gold repricing actually is, who understands it has already happened here once, stops being a reliable customer. So the laughter is not analysis. The laughter is marketing. And by the end of this video, I want you to be able to explain to anyone at your dinner table exactly why. Let me tell you who I want you to keep in mind while we walk through this. There is a retired watch repairman down in Sarasota, Florida. I will call him Gene. Gene spent 40-some years hunched over a bench with a loop screwed into his eye, setting balance wheels, coaxing old mainsprings back to life, regulating movements until they kept honest time. A man like that does not get impressed by loud claims. His whole trade was precision. A watch either keeps time or it does not, and no amount of salesmanship changes what the movement is doing inside the case. Gene has a retirement account he built one repair ticket at a time, and when he hears a number like the one in this title, his instinct is the same as yours. Prove it. Do not tell me a story. Show me the mechanism. So that is what we are going to do. And Gene is going to come back later in this video because his trade holds the single best picture of what a repricing actually is. Here is the history they do not teach, and it is the spine of everything I am going to show you. In 1933, in the depths of the Depression, the President of the United States signed an executive order that ended the private holding of monetary gold. Americans turned in their coins. That was step one, and it stunned people. But step two is the part that matters for you. The following year, 1934, Congress passed the Gold Reserve Act, and with it, the government did something no market forecaster had on their card. It changed the official price of gold from roughly $21 an ounce to $35 overnight. Not because miners struck a shortage, not because demand surged, because the government said so. That is a markup of roughly 69%, by decree, by signature, between one business day and the next. And you have to ask the question Gene would ask, why would they do that? The answer is the whole story. The country was buried under debts that could not be honestly carried. Private debts, bank debts, obligations everywhere you looked, all denominated in dollars that were legally chained to gold at the old price. By revaluing gold upward, Washington devalued the dollar downward. Every dollar of debt got lighter in real terms. The gold in the government's vaults was suddenly worth dramatically more on the books, and the paper promises stacked against it were suddenly worth less. Nobody called it a default. Nobody used the word bankruptcy. They called it policy. But what it was, functionally, was the United States shrinking its debts by repricing the one asset that could not be printed. Hold on to that sentence, because it is the engine of everything that follows. Now here is where it stops being a history lesson and starts being uncomfortable. Look at the shape of the federal balance sheet in this stretch of history. The interest alone on the national debt has grown so large that it has crowded past the entire defense budget. The cost of simply carrying the debt now outruns the cost of the largest military on Earth. I want you to sit with that, because it is not a data print that expires next month. It is a structural fact that compounds. And I will tell you something I have learned watching this world for a long time. It is never the scary headline of the day that changes a retirement. It is the debt arithmetic grinding underneath, year after year, until one day the arithmetic forces a decision. In 1934, the arithmetic forced a decision. The question in front of us is not whether the arithmetic is building again. It visibly is. The question is what form the decision takes. To see why, you need one piece of mechanism, and it is the piece the financial channels almost never explain. A rising gold price is not gold changing. Gold is the same inert metal it was when the pharaohs held it. What changes is the measuring stick, the dollar being repriced against the one money nobody can issue. And there is historically only one way a government has ever broken that repricing once it starts: punishing double-digit interest rates that are genuinely higher than inflation, held there long enough to hurt. It was done once at the start of the 1980s, and it worked. But it worked in a country whose debt was small enough to survive the medicine. Run that same medicine at the current debt load, and the interest expense does not sting the budget, it detonates it. The honest arithmetic says that door is closed. And when the hard money door is closed, history says the pressure finds the other exit. The currency takes the adjustment. The chairman before that hard money era faced the same choice, flinched, and inflation ran for a decade. Cornered governments do not choose the medicine. They choose the repricing. So now let us do what the title demands and walk the actual path to the number. No vibes, just arithmetic and precedent. Gold in this stretch has been pressing record territory, near $4,000. Start there. Precedent 1. The 1934 revaluation was roughly a 69% markup in a single stroke. Apply that same scale of decree to a price near 4,000, and you land in the high 6,000s, near 7 in one signature. Precedent 2. The 1970s. Gold left that decade's fixed price near $35 and touched over $800 by January of 1980. And even from the brutal mid-decade washout, when it had been nearly cut in half, it multiplied roughly 8 times into the peak. Precedent 3. The quiet bull market from 1999 to 2011 carried gold from roughly $250 to roughly $1,900. Call it more than sevenfold, while Wall Street looked the other way the entire time. Now set the title's number against those. 8,000 from near 4,000 is a doubling. A doubling. It is the smallest move of the 4 I just named. Every one of those larger moves actually happened in documented American market history, within living memory or one generation beyond it. That is the case. Not a guarantee, not a date, not a promise. A demonstration that the number they told you was a punchline sits comfortably inside the range of things that have already occurred. And that is not even the strangest part of this story. The strangest part is who is quietly behaving as if they have read the 1934 playbook cover to cover. The central banks of the world, the institutions that issue the paper, have been absorbing gold at a pace with no modern parallel. More than 1,000 tons a year, 3 years running. Roughly twice the rhythm they kept through the previous decade. They kept accumulating straight through price dips, which is not how tourists behave. It is how institutions behave when they are executing a plan rather than chasing a chart. And the milestone that should have led every evening broadcast, and did not, gold has climbed past the euro to stand as the second largest reserve asset on Earth. The issuers of currency are trading their neighbor's paper for bullion. When the people who print the promises start stockpiling the thing promises are measured against, you are watching preparation. The only real question is what they are preparing for, and I would argue the 1930s already answered it. There is one more piece, and it explains the timing of all that buying. When major foreign reserves were frozen by decree a few years back, hundreds of billions in supposedly untouchable national savings switched off like a porch light. The gold accumulation did not slow. It accelerated. Because every Treasury official on Earth learned the same lesson in the same week. A reserve held as somebody else's promise can be canceled by the promise maker. A bar of metal in your own vault cannot. It has no counterparty, no password, and no off switch. That lesson scales all the way down from a national treasury to a retirement account in Sarasota, and it is the single most important thing I will say in this video. And it is exactly why, right here, I want to pause and tell you about something we put together, because this is the moment it matters. It is called the Free Retirement Wealth Protection Guide, and it walks through how American retirees are diversifying a portion of their retirement savings into physical gold and silver inside the account they already have, a 401k or an IRA, without taxes and without penalties, using what is called a self-directed precious metals IRA. Real metal, in your name, not a paper promise that somebody else can switch off. This is not just for insiders or the wealthy few. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, this is for you, and the guide was written for exactly where you are sitting. It is completely free, from our family to yours. No obligation, nothing to buy. If you are watching this on your TV, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. Get it, read it with your husband or your wife, and then come right back, because the second half of this is where the picture sharpens. Let me bring Gene back, because I promised you his trade holds the best picture of this, and it does. A customer once brought Gene a beautiful old wristwatch that ran slow, losing minutes every day. There are two things a repairman can do with a watch like that. He can open the case, clean the movement, replace the worn parts, and make it honest again. Or he can do what a con man does: repaint the dial, move the markers, change what the hands appear to say without touching what the movement is actually doing. Now understand what happened in 1934 in those terms. The government did not fix the movement. The debts were still the debts. The economy was still broken. What Washington did was repaint the dial, redefine what a dollar measured, and gold was the marker they moved. That is what a revaluation is. The metal never changed. The dial did. And every dollar bill in every mattress in America quietly measured less than it had the day before. Gene spent his life making instruments tell the truth. The lesson of his own government's history is that the dollar is an instrument whose dial has been repainted before, by the people who own the paint. Now let me be straight with you about what I do not know, because you should not trust anyone in this business who skips this part. I do not know the day, the year, or the form. A repricing can come as a decree, the way it did in 1934, or as a slow, grinding drift, the way the 70s delivered it. I cannot tell you which, and I will not pretend to. I also will not hide the risks from you. In the middle of the greatest gold bull market of the 20th century, the metal was nearly cut in half before its biggest leg, a fall that shook out everyone who had bought the story but not sized their position to survive it. In 2013, the mere hint that the Federal Reserve might slow its bond buying knocked gold down by more than a quarter. And in this stretch, long-term government bond yields have pushed up to generational highs, and high yields are a genuine, honest headwind for a metal that pays no interest. Anyone who tells you this road is smooth is selling something. The case for the destination is strong. The road there will try very hard to throw you off. That is analysis, not personal financial advice, and it is a case, never a certainty. But now watch what happens when you line up the other precedents next to 1934, because a pattern emerges that changes how you read every financial headline. 1971. A president closes the gold window on a summer weekend, announces it as temporary, and it is never reversed. The dollar's last anchor cut by a televised address, not by any market. 1985. The world's major governments meet at a hotel in New York and simply agree to walk the dollar down together. No rate decision, no vote you were consulted on, and in the years that followed, as the dollar sank, gold rose substantially. Even deeper back, there was a stretch of roughly a decade when the Federal Reserve openly pinned government borrowing costs at artificial lows purely so the Treasury could carry its war debts. Do you see the thread? 3 different generations, one identical reflex. When the debt math stops working, the government does not fix the math. It changes the measuring stick. It has never needed your permission, and it has never called ahead. Here is the part that should genuinely make you stop and think about who has been laughing at whom. That quiet bull run I mentioned, $250 to $1,900 across a dozen years, happened while the mainstream financial industry dismissed gold as a relic for barbarians. The same institutions smirking at the number in this title sat through a 7-fold move calling it a fad the entire way up. And if you are worried you are late instead of early, look for the fingerprints of a top, because manias leave fingerprints. January of 1980 had them all. Lines wrapped around coin shops, families melting down the wedding flatware, the price gapping higher day after day, cab drivers quoting the fix. Look around now. The professional institutions that manage America's pensions still hold a historically tiny sliver of gold. a rounding error of their portfolios. Your neighbors are not lined up anywhere. The only crowd at the counter is the central banks themselves. In my experience, tops look like everyone you know rushing in. This looks like almost no one you know even paying attention, while the most informed buyers on the planet accumulate in size. Those are opposite pictures. So what do you actually do with what you own? Not advice, but the principles I have watched keep people safe through every one of these cycles. First, size any metal position so that a violent shakeout cannot force you to sell it. The market has a long memory for punishing the over-leveraged and the overextended, and the 70s proved a having can arrive in the middle of a historic bull run. Second, if the case you believe is the repricing case, own the actual metal, not merely a paper claim on it. In the panic of 2020, the price of gold in New York futures tore violently apart from the price of real bars in London. Planes were chartered, vaults scrambled, and for a few extraordinary days the world saw plainly that a paper promise and a bar in a vault are not the same asset. Splits like that are rare, but they only ever happen at the worst possible moment, which is precisely when you need the distinction to be real. Third, never sell into the panic itself. The 1934 generation that fared best was the one holding the thing that got revalued upward, not the ones holding the paper that got revalued down. And notice one more pattern before we close, because it decides how much time you think you have. Repricings do not arrive on a schedule with advance notice. 1934 happened between 2 business days. 1971 was announced on a Sunday evening broadcast while the market slept. The night Britain voted to leave Europe, gold ripped higher in the overnight hours, before American savers had finished their coffee. Even a bank scare a few years back, depositors suddenly remembering that a deposit is just a loan to a bank, moved golden days. The consistent shape of this entire story is stillness, 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 then a step change that was legally impossible on Friday and law by Monday. A mainspring, Gene would tell you, is exactly that, tension wound in quietly over a very long time, holding perfectly still and releasing all at once. Which brings us to the honest bottom line about where you and I sit in this story. The treasuries and central banks of the world are already positioned, years deep into the largest official gold accumulation of the modern era, executed while the financial press yawned. The overwhelming majority of reserve managers surveyed say they expect official gold holdings to keep climbing. Meanwhile, the pension funds, the brokerage models, and the evening news have barely turned their heads. That gap between what the informed money has already done and what the public has not yet noticed is the entire opportunity, and it is temporary by nature. The day a repricing is respectable dinner party conversation, the day the smile in the brokerage office is gone, most of the distance will already be behind us. The advantage was never in knowing something magical. It was simply in taking the arithmetic seriously before the crowd was forced to. If this video moved something in you, if the 1934 story landed the way it landed for me the first time I truly understood it, then let me leave you with the same 2 doors I opened earlier. Get the free Retirement Wealth Protection Guide. It is written for American retirees with $100,000 or more in a retirement account, and it walks through protecting and diversifying a portion of what you spent a lifetime building, and what your children and your grandchildren will one day inherit, with physical gold and silver inside the 401k or IRA you already have. No taxes, no penalties. And if you have $100,000 or more and you watch this whole video, mention that when you reach out, and you will be offered a free one-on-one educational web conference, a real conversation with a real person, from our family to yours. No obligation, nothing to buy. The honest reason to do it now is simply this. Every precedent in this video arrived without notice, and the calm stretch when nothing feels urgent is the only stretch in which this decision is unhurried, inexpensive, and entirely on your terms. If you are watching this on your TV, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. They told you it was a joke. They told the country the same thing once before. Right up until the evening a signature in Washington made the joke the law of the land, and the people holding paper found out the punchline was them. Somewhere in Sarasota, there was a retired watch repairman who spent his whole life refusing to let an instrument lie. And the one thing he would tell you is the thing I will leave you with. Do not watch the hands. Watch the movement. The movement, the debt, the arithmetic, the quiet accumulation by the people who print the promises has been wound tight for years. The number in the title is not a joke. It is just a dial that has not been repainted yet.